Welcome back to part 2 of our conversation with designated drinker Dr. John Edward Hasse, jazz author and curator for the Smithsonian National Museum of American History. So if you've missed part 1, you're going to want to belly back up to that bar and give it a listen first. We promise to save you a seat right here.
Right here. Yes, looking right at you. Two eyes, two dragon eyes on you.
Yeah. If you don't know what dragon eyes are, you need to go back to part 1. So John, in part 1, you shared with us your early days coming up in that musical space of yours and through college and being a part of the Smithsonian, curating some amazing jazz artifacts. And I'd really love for us to jump in part 2 and talk about talk about Jazz Appreciation Month. What was the inspiration behind that?
Well, it was the late 90s, and I was acutely aware that jazz was not getting the respect that it deserved. And lots of colleges and universities didn't even teach it. It wasn't considered worthwhile of study. It was excluded from a lot of concert halls. And I thought back to Black History Month. And when I researched it, I found out that it began in 1922 as Negro History Week. Wow. And then after something like 50 years, it was expanded to a whole month and the name was changed. And even my daughter knew about it because it was brought up in school. So I thought, what if we had a month for jazz? And it got into the schools, into libraries, into public radio stations, et cetera. It could give the music more visibility, recognition, and prestige. So it took a couple of years, but I finally got the museum to bless it, and that happened when the chair of the National Endowment for the Arts gave it a discretionary chairman's grant. And once it had some outside money, then the Smithsonian decided to take it more seriously. And they blessed it, and I asked the State Department if they'd like to get behind it. They did. Wow. The Defense Department, because the Army, the Navy, and the Air Force each have superb jazz bands. Mm-hmm. We got the Arts Endowment involved and a couple of other organizations, including the Music Educators Association. And then each year, we announced it in July 2001 with Quincy Jones.
Wow.
To bless it and endorse it. And then the first actual jam was held in April 2002. So now it's been going for over 20 years. Wow. And it's celebrated in all 50 states and at least 40 countries around the world. The museum has issued over 2 million posters sent to schools, libraries, U.S. embassies abroad. Laura Bush mentioned it from the stage in the White House. It's been mentioned on the stage of the Kennedy Center. You know, it's really wonderfully accepted, and I'm proud of all the people who have gotten behind it.
Talk about leaving a legacy. Good Lord. I know, we're slackers.
I thought Brewers on the Block was an accomplishment. That thing sucks. I have a beer festival. That thing's terrible. Oh my God. I'm going to go to the White House and be like, Kamala, could you just talk about Brewers on the Block for a second? I don't even know. No, just kidding. Just kidding.
That must fill your heart with pride. I mean, to know that you were able to share such amazing music and such, to your point, an American treasure broadly and not, within our borders, which is sad that it took that much for it to come to light, but fortunately you did so. But then to take it well beyond our borders, that's amazing.
Well, it's been so gratifying to see people get behind it, and all sorts of schools have scheduled programs. Now, a lot of these programs fly below the radar of Google because Google doesn't usually pick up a program in a grade school, middle school, or high school for the students and maybe the parents. But a lot of libraries put out books in April to encourage people to check these books out, books on jazz. Public radio stations recognize it, and something like 80 radio public service announcements, PSAs, have been taped with everybody from Carlos Santana to Herbie Hancock, Wynton Marsalis have gotten behind it. So it's been really gratifying to see this.
I bet.
How does it kick off in DC? Tell us. Like, if you're listening to this show and you're here in DC, what should you be doing?
Well, you'd hear it mentioned promoted on WPFW, the Jazz and Justice station. You'd come over to the Smithsonian and hear the Smithsonian Jazz Masterworks Orchestra perform.
Wow.
You could go to smithsonianjazz.org and download the latest poster and a booklet of 113 ways to celebrate Jazz Appreciation Month and other information. And there are all the previous posters, everybody from Ella to Louis Armstrong to Duke Ellington, Dave Brubeck, Mary Lou Williams, Nina Simone.
Oh, yes. Nina Simone.
And on and on. You can download these posters and print them out at your home or school or office.
Oh, that's nice.
That's really cool.
SmithsonianJazz.org.
That's amazing, right? Like, you just well, I mean, I don't know if my kids' school does. I don't think they do that. I live in Frederick now. We used to live in DC, and DC was a little different.
Yeah.
But definitely in Frederick, they're like, maybe.
Yeah.
I was gonna say something mean, and I decided not to.
Yeah.
You can let that air. Frederick County schools need to do more for the arts.
Yeah.
But anyway.
Yeah. Do you think that, not to turn it negative, do you think that the amount of effort that it took for you to make jazz come to the forefront, that it was, to your point, was overlooked, not taught? Do you think that was mostly racially motivated? Do you think that's what it was that kept it from coming to the forefront and getting its stage that it deserved?
I think that's been a big part of it historically, especially in the earlier years of the 20th century. I think less so now, but still I think that is a part of it. And it's something that a lot of classical musicians, historically anyway, have not really understood. It seemed too mysterious. The notes aren't written down. Well, how can you really understand this? And in the old days, somebody might have said, would you want your daughter to marry a jazz musician? Because, back in the swing era, it was a tough way to make a living.
Sure.
It was late nights, touring, lack of home life for those musicians who were touring, the temptations of alcohol, sometimes drugs, and it was a really tough life. And you didn't necessarily have tenure with the band you were in. Yeah. You could be out on your
Took us.
butt, just like that, So, but it's gotten it has more acceptance than it did way back then, and I'm glad to see it. But still, there are probably half of American colleges and universities that don't teach it. So wow. I think it has a long ways to go still.
Wow. So speaking of gin joints.
All the gin joints in the world, Louise.
Why don't we belly up to yours?
Okay, let's go.
All right, let's do it.
One thing I love about talking about jazz and all of that is, that for me, that's a gin era, right? Like, if you take your music, I take it in cocktails, like what was popular. And like you had, whiskey, gin, Geneva, and like that hooch was really important to that time. So I kind of wanted to honor both. So what we're going to do is make a cocktail. We're going to do one non-alcoholic, because it's really fun. And then we'll do one with alcohol. So we'll do one with the Forger's Gin, and then we'll do one without. But what we're doing here is using the Loganberry, which is, to me, like one of the, it's like a really like musky, tart berry. It's not quite as sweet as, say, a lychee. They look very similar. And a lot of times, so a lot of times there'll be this black pit inside. And you'll look at it and you'll be like, oh, you're like, it looks like an eye, right? They call it the dragon's eye. And I thought, how fitting for something to be the dragon's eye. It sounds very chatty, dragon eye, I don't know. What kind of person works? For me, I've been to some dark, amazing bar in, lower Manhattan. And we more closer up in Manhattan. And, and like nobody in this place was happening. And all of the velvet curtains and everything. So in here I have 3 of the Loganberries. I'm just squishing them down. And if you're doing it at home, you can smell it. It actually has this really almost like muscadine smell to it. It's really interesting. It's a little sweet, but mostly tart, more like a lemon. So we're gonna mix that with fresh lime juice. And, you know, I always tell everybody on the show, people listening to the show all these years, is if you forget your juicer, a fork and a palm will work just as well. So I forgot my juicer today.
It's like jazz, right?
Yeah,
You improvise.
you
absolutely.
improvise. Still makes the music, right?
Right.
All right, so we're going to do the fresh lime juice. And we add the lingonberry in there. Sorry for my wiggle here. It's going to take a little bit longer than normal. These are a little bit different. You don't get the same yield of after. So what you're looking for is 1 ounce of lime juice. So if you have this pre-squeeze, it's 1 ounce of lime juice per drink. So I'm just going to do this again by hand. So I always say fresh is best. We've got a newer fresh, though. You know, sometimes it takes us a little bit longer. Anyway, so we got, and yeah, so again, we have 2 lingonberries. We muddled them. Now we're putting 1 ounce of lime juice per drink in there. And now we're going to add up a rice wine vinegar simple syrup. It is technically a shrub, but shrub is when you put fruit in something and let it sit in vinegar and then you make it into something with sugar, right? This is rice wine vinegar and sugar, and then we put a little bit of cardamom and anise in there. And I love using vinegars in drinks, you know, it's just really nice, especially at this time of year. You want to brighten things up. So for each drink, we're going to put in 1 ounce. And, you know, rice wine vinegar is really lovely in its own, like, accord. It's just, you know, it's quite great. If you're going to do this drink with gin, you can use an egg white. You don't have to use an egg white. It's optional. Kind of make it like a flip. If you're going to do it non-alcoholic, which we are going to do today, and then we'll do yours, Louise, you just want to, like, you know, leave that out. You can add soda water to it. You can keep it short. And if you have fresh ice, it is just made to be a refresher.
See, now that's music to my ears.
Yeah, right. Remind you of maracas?
Yeah.
Okay.
You could get a job with a Latin jazz band. Right?
I know, right? You know, we say that, you know, the best bartender is how you could hear the rhythm, right?
Yeah.
All right, so we have all that in there. So we are going to just make sure that you don't get a bunch of salad in your drink. And we're going to pour them on top. And then we're going to add the gin to Louise's because I don't have 2 jiggers. And I was going to put a pop of soda water on the top of yours for the non-alcoholic, and then Louise will add the gin too. And then, you know, there's something really lovely about, you know, fresh and springtime and, you know, April. And I wanted to make sure that we put some kind of fresh flowers in there. And I feel like we're going to do some baby marigolds for you. And they're really beautiful. And then we'll do a little. And they're edible. They're showing my fave. Want to a little bit of purple. I'm like, very, just, you know, for that time of year. And there we go. So it's our non-alcoholic.
Thank you.
And then, you know, for my little cocktail kitten over here, we're going to add a little bit of gin to it. And then we're using a Forager's gin, which is very floral. So now, when you have yours in there, I don't really recommend soda water with it. If you have the gin in it, you don't need it. And then also a really fun thing is if you don't have a lot of flowers and you have to be running, something else you can do is you split them and just give them a little sprinkle. I really love edible flowers. This is Barrage. It has a little bit of a really beautiful cucumber finger jar.
Thank you.
Some cheers. Cheers.
Cheers.
I have new fancy glasses, everybody, if you're watching.
Oh, that's delicious.
Oh, not per Q level.
Really nice.
Gina, this drink is delicious.
Oh my gosh, this is great. Thank you so much.
Yeah, of course.
One of your ingredients reminds me of that old jazz song, Scotch and soda, jigger a gin.
Make mine 2 jiggers, please.
I love that. No, I was saying that.
So we did make this music man sing.
Yes. Yeah. No, I was saying that, you know, really like this music, like music and cocktails is very, very important, right? Every time you make like different cocktails or experience, like the music is like right on. So when we were talking about jazz, I was like, oh, it's got to be gin.
Yeah.
It can't be anything else. It has to be gin. It could have been like Geneva, but it's just another type of gin, really, right? The bowls, right? Everyone will say the bowls.
Yeah.
Right.
So you'll hear that in songs. It'll show up. All of a sudden, they'll be like, you know, fit the bowls or something.
Yeah.
And that's just, and it's Geneva. So, or, a primitive form of gin before
You know
gin
that-
got fancy.
You know, the first place I had Geneva was at Tales, which is in New Orleans. Which, of course, you know, it's a great place for jazz as well.
100%.
Yeah.
Jazz never died in New Orleans, right?
No, it didn't.
Yeah.
It didn't.
Because I mean, like, I could not even imagine that. I love everything about like going out to anywhere in New Orleans. It's like the music is unreal.
And it's my favorite city to eat in all of North America. Oh my gosh, the food. And you've got those festivals, that not only the Jazz Fest in April and May, but the French Quarter Festival, all over the French Quarter in April. And then in the summer, the Satchmo Summerfest, named for Louis Armstrong.
Oh.
So
I didn't know that. When is that?
I believe it's the beginning of August. It's a miserable
I was like,
time
ooh,
to be there.
it is.
The festival is great.
That's when Tales of the Cocktail is. It's right before in the last week of July. So I understand misery and sweat.
Yes.
Right.
But I also think I would love a Louis Armstrong.
Well, next time we
right?
do it, maybe we should stay longer.
Yeah, I love a little Louis.
Yeah,
you know,
who doesn't?
I mean,
Come on.
and Louis is one of my favorite words to say. Just I don't know why. You have the Louis Vuitton or you have Louis Armstrong, whatever. I'm good with the Louis.
Well, you hang out with this one.
I know. That's what I'm saying. I got them all around.
So Gina, where are they gonna go for this recipes?
So if you want the recipe for a cocktail,
Yes.
you're gonna go to designateddrinker.show. And then, for tips and tricks and everything, again, you'll go to designateddrinker.show. And there is where we will tell you how to pair music. No, I'm just kidding. Enjoy your music and your cocktails together.
Yeah, because those cocktails
also
are
how-
music to
and
my
also-
ears, remember?
Yes, and also how to get to jam.
Yes, how to
Right.
get some information on jam,
Yeah.
what's going on, and I'm sure if we get you to the Smithsonian website, correct, we'll be able to get information about everything that's going on. Yeah,
SmithsonianJazz.org.
there we go. So if you can always just go down to the episode notes for that too. You scroll down, we'll make sure we have live links for that. And if you can't get to the website, it's a cheater, pumpkin eater way to get there.
Yeah, fabulous.
Jazz hands.
Big jazz hand.
The other day when we were talking, John, you told me about your days at the State Department and how you traveled around the world and lectured about jazz. And you shared a little Hello Dolly story with me. Would you share that again?
Sure, Louise. I was in South Africa about 12 years ago, lecturing for the U.S. Embassy there. And one of the audiences was a group of township boys who had taken a bus a couple of hours from their township to hear a talk on Louis Armstrong. And these were very poor townships, dirt floors, no running water. And I was honored that these young men would come to hear about Louis Armstrong. And when I played a recording of Louis Armstrong singing Hello Dolly, a whole section of the boys started singing along. They knew the music and they knew the lyrics. This great artist, Louis Armstrong, had transcended the years, the oceans, the languages, the cultures, all that, and the decades. And these young people knew his music. I was blown away by that.
That is kind of amazing, though, right? I think, music is one thing, you can't, you hear it, right? It doesn't have to travel with, it's not like you have to pack it in a bag. It's something that now is even more so.
Yeah.
It just could be, you can listen to every single kind of, music. And there is music for everybody. I don't know anybody that's like, I can't stand noise.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? And it's very like, I don't know. It's just, that's incredible though, like to think about like that moment, right? It's like when you go to another country and someone knows the songs, right? Or vice versa.
Something like that happened in Alexandria, Egypt. Again, I was lecturing on Louis Armstrong, who had been there many decades before, and performed, had tooted his horn in a publicity photo up at the Sphinx. And I gave my talk, and afterwards, a much older woman dressed in traditional Muslim garb with a headscarf came down. She didn't speak a word of English, and I don't know how she knew what I'd said, but she evidently enjoyed the video clips. And she just had one word to say to me. She said, "Sukra," which is the Arabic word for sugar. And I didn't take that as a compliment to me, but as to Louis Armstrong. He spoke to her, again, across the decades, the cultures, the languages, the miles. It was another wonderful moment.
Absolutely. Such amazing life. It's an amazing life. So speaking of your amazing life, what would your life soundtrack sound like? What would be on there?
How many pieces can I choose?
That's a good one. That's a hard question.
Well, to make it short, I would certainly choose Louis Armstrong and Duke Ellington.
Yeah.
Ella Fitzgerald would be on there. Frank Sinatra, Ray Charles, Aretha Franklin. I'd have me some Beethoven and Chopin. Probably some Gershwin. That would be the starting point.
Wow.
Gershwin is a very, for me, it's very New York, right? Like, I feel like I'm very fortunate to have grown up in New York, and a good New York kid, or anybody that grew up in the boroughs, or even Long Island, you will know who Gershwin is, obviously, because of the theater. And, like, you take it for granted here because, you know, like in New York, as a kid, that's where you went, like on your school field trips. You went to the theater. You listened to music. You know, you did those things. And then, like, you're here, and, like, my kids, like, just saw their first Broadway show, and they didn't understand. I was like, oh, this is where they used to have cats and blah, blah, blah. And my kids are like, what are you talking about, Mom? It's cats. And they're just staring at me like that movie. I'm like, ew, no, not the movie. And, you know, you find it, you know, like, I don't know. I find it to be fascinating, like, that kind of, like, you just had to, like, incorporate it back into everyone's life. For me, for bartenders, it's easy. You can ask any bartender all your playlists right now, and they can tell you, like, at least one song by each person.
Sure.
Because they're so busy curating, like, how your experience is when you're drinking.
Right.
And it loops every hour as the change of the seats in the bar. So, like, or every, you know, hour and a half, and it'll move around. But it's built to, a good cocktail bar will be built to your music. Yeah. It's built, the cocktails are around the music. So I find that to be
that
really
full
cool.
experience, right?
It really is.
In and outside the glass.
100%. 100%. That's why I was, like, really excited today. I was like, I do this all. I'm so happy.
You're just a little giddy, I think.
I am. I get a little, it's a little starstruck. I love people that, like, you know, you love what you do. So when you love what you do, it's obvious. You know?
It's contagious.
It is.
Yeah.
And you get excited.
Yeah. All right. I think this is you, Gina.
This is my last question.
This is the last question.
Okay, this is funny. You're gonna die laughing when I pick great. All right. So everybody, you know, seems to identify these days with some sort of spirit animal, and they'll be like, you know, I identify with a hummingbird because, you know, they're zippy in and out, and, you know, they're known for their, like, low flutter of their, you know, the beats of the fluttering of their wings, right? If you can identify as one ingredient in cooking or cocktails or juice, whatever, what ingredient would you be and why?
Love.
Love, okay.
Oh.
Yeah. You know, every night my wife fixes a wonderful dinner. She likes to cook and I like to clean up. So it's kind of a fair division of labor, but I tell her, you know, every meal you make, sweetie, is filled with your love. And I think that's the most important ingredient in any cooking.
All right, I'm crying. We've never had anywhere near that.
Yeah, I'm getting teary-eyed. Also, Neil, are you listening to what he just said? I cook for you every night. Honey. That's so sweet.
That was amazing.
Whoa.
Well, on that one,
I know.
we have to toast John on that one. You just stole the show. You shut it down.
Cheers.
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 The Designated Drinker Show is produced by Missing Link, a Latino-owned, strategy-driven, creatively fueled production co-op. From ideation to creation, we craft human connections through intelligent, engaging, and informative content. Also in the Missing Link lineup of podcasts is Roger That, a podcast dedicated to guiding you through the haze of dementia, led by skilled caregivers. Now, if you're looking for a whole new way to enjoy the theater, check out Between Acts, an immersive audio theater podcast experience. Each episode takes you on a spellbinding journey through the works of newfound playwrights, from dramas to comedies and everything in between. Find Missing Link's League of Podcasts on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your podcasts. And while you're there, please don't forget to follow, download, and review the shows. Your reviews help our shows reach new audiences. To find out more about Missing Link, visit missinglink.company. That's missinglink.company.